No one is supposed to be able to disappear in a house where everything is filmed. And yet, an entire room is about to empty without anyone seeing a thing. Christopher tightens the car seat strap with one hand, his phone in the other. On the screen, Shanann's smiling face. Behind him, the marital bed is already stripped. Christopher Watts, oil field operator, says he likes his routine, getting into his work truck, clocking in at a remote site, coming home to a tidy house, a wife who films everything, 2 little girls laughing for the camera, a 3rd pregnancy announced on video. To the neighbors, it looks like an ad for the perfect family. To Christopher, it's a contract closing in on him. The gap is starting to weigh on him. On August 13th, 2018, in Frederick, the first thing that goes off track is not a scream, it's a silence. Shanann's phone goes still. No more texts, no more notifications. Her friend Nicole sees the white Lexus still in the driveway. No movement behind the blinds, no answer. In the living room, the purse is there, the keys, the medication for lupus, her phone on a couch. The marital bed, however, has no sheets. Christopher arrives in work clothes, Anadarko badge on his chest. He opens the door, talks fast, waves his hand to show the empty rooms. The officers follow, camera rolling. The children are nowhere. The set is still standing, but nothing is happening there anymore. At first, Christopher's version seems to hold up because it reassures everyone, including him. Hypothesis A, the most comforting. Shanann must have left. An argument at dawn, words about divorce, custody, money. She would have taken the girls, their little things, a friend to pick them up later. An impulse. She suffers from an autoimmune disease. She is pregnant. She is stressed by the debts. She might have snapped, decided to disappear for a few days, cut the phone, leave this house that has become suffocating. On TV shows, Christopher looks at the camera and repeats that he just wants her to come back. He says they only talked, that nothing violent happened, that Shanann has been impulsive before. You could almost believe him. Then the line appears in the report. Shanann never leaves the house without her phone, her medication, and her children. The line sticks. Hypothesis B, more complex, then takes over. Here, Christopher is no longer just a worried husband, but a man caught in a machine that's too big for him. Months of financial pressure, bankruptcy, creditor lawsuits, late mortgage payments. A house that's too expensive in a subdivision that's too polished. An Anadarko employee doing long shifts on oil fields to maintain a facade that's crumbling. While Shanann travels for her sales conventions, he stays in Colorado. He chains shifts together, remote sites, then a coworker, Nicole. With her, he searches on his phone for a different life. Separation, selling the house, life without children. He books outings, hires a babysitter, goes out while Shanann is in Scottsdale. In this hypothesis, the tragedy would be the breaking point of a man unable to say no, trapped between a very visible wife on social media and a secret relationship that promises him a fresh start. He would have lied, yes, but above all, panicked. One lie covered by other lies, up to the failed polygraph, up to the partial confession. He would have destroyed everything in a moment of tipping over, without a clear plan, then improvised the rest. Except that the movements of his truck on the Survey 319 site show cold precision, not a panic attack. Hypothesis C is disturbing because it removes all excuses. Christopher knew exactly what he was doing. He has access to the tanks many times. He knows the site by heart. He chooses this specific site that morning after already searching online how to rebuild a life without his family. He is not fleeing pressure. He is removing obstacles. And then, this same hypothesis flips again. He doesn't erase anything. He leaves a trace everywhere. GPS, cameras, texts, videos. He's the one who closes the door of the house, already knowing that everything, sooner or later, will appear on screen. The future case file already exists in each of its steps. The block that makes everything derail comes neither from the investigators nor from the experts. It comes from Christopher himself, at the exact moment when he tries to stick to a story he cannot bear to hear coming out of his own mouth. In the first hours, he plays his role. At the house, in front of the officers, he opens the closets, describes Shanann's habits, repeats that she might be at a friend's. He points toward the girl's bedroom, lets the cameras enter the intimacy of the family setting. The unicorn pajamas, the little shoes lined up, the marital bed without a sheet, a detail he pretends not to notice. On the neighbor's screen in the living room, the agents watch the surveillance video from the night. His work truck, backed into the driveway in the early morning. His shadow going back and forth, loading something, coming back up. Christopher stands behind them, arms crossed, rocking slightly on his heels. When he thinks he's no longer in the frame, you can see him inhale deeply and clench his jaw. This isn't a scripted detail. It's in the report. The body follows what the mouth denies. Then comes the CBI office, the windowless room, the metal chair that's a bit too low. The agent who installs the sensors for the polygraph keeps telling him that lying on the test is a very bad idea. He nods, says he understands. The questions begin. He swears he doesn't know where his wife and daughters are. He swears he didn't hurt them. The result comes back, clear, failed. From that point on, there is no more gray area. The investigators tell him so. They show him the inconsistencies, the timelines, the GPS data from the truck at the Survey 319 site early that morning. They remind him of the statements. Shanann never leaves without her phone, let alone without her lupus medication. They talk about the searches about separation, the exchanges with Nicole, the outings while Shanann is in North Carolina. In that room, the wall isn't the police or justice. It's the idea Christopher clings to, the idea of a story in which he remains, despite everything, an overwhelmed man, not a cold-blooded murderer. He refuses to cross that line. He knows that Shanann's body is already somewhere on an oil site he chose. He knows where the girls are, but he still wants to tell himself that what he did is not what the facts will say. The only way out, he finds, is an accusation impossible to defend, but more bearable for him. He tells his father that Shanann supposedly killed the children, that he strangled her in a fit of rage. He repeats this version to the investigators. He gets it into the case file. He lets it be printed in black and white, with his own name at the top. That moment is the real blockage, because once he has laid down that story, everything else becomes a minefield. At the autopsy, the marks on Shanann's body don't match a struggle with her daughters. The strangulation marks tell a different story. The signs of asphyxiation on Bella and Celeste don't match what he describes. His version doesn't last more than a few hours, but it stays in the file, like a dead line of defense, impossible to stand by in public, untenable in front of Shanann's family. At the same time, the outside context closes in. The house, bought on credit, is already in the creditor's sights. The debts are piling up. Shanann's social media, still visible, show videos where she films him, Christopher, as a loving father. The media relay the footage of his interviews, where he asks for the return of those he himself made disappear. The contrast is brutal, impossible to make up for. In his Weld County cell, after his arrest, there is no longer a screen to filter anything, no more camera to adjust his role, just white walls, a light that stays on too long, and this lying story he is now a prisoner of. With a dry throat, he has to repeat it to his lawyers, to the prosecutor, to the judge, all the while knowing that each new forensic report weakens it a little more. Time stretches out. The wall is this: the distance between what he really did in the marital bedroom between 4 and 5 in the morning and what he is willing to hear said officially. A distance that condemns him to a single option: keep silent or renounce himself. Specialists agree that this type of familicide is often rooted in a mix of financial pressure, a double life, and a personality focused on controlling one's image. Others, more cautious, emphasize that Christopher does not fit perfectly into classic profiles, and that his lack of documented violent history complicates any definitive reading. All avoid pushing too far the idea that an apparently ordinary man can, without obvious warning signs, tip over like this, because that would mean no one really knows how to recognize the next one. The doubt lingers in the background. When Christopher finally accepts the guilty plea, it is not out of some spectacular close-up remorse. It's a dry, administrative slide, in a courtroom where everything is already written. That day, he hears the list of charges: murder of Shanann, murder of Bella, murder of Celeste, unlawful termination of pregnancy for Nico, tampering with a corpse. He knows the prosecutor gave up the death penalty after speaking with Shanann's parents. The only thing he has left is the number of doors closing behind him, and for how long. The judge hands down multiple consecutive life sentences. He will never get out. What collapses at that moment is not just the illusion of a marriage saved by communication or patience. It is a more intimate belief he had long held. That of a man who could always start his life over somewhere else, with another person, another setting, simply erasing whatever was in his way. He thought he could change the script, the way you change an oil field, a work schedule, a Facebook account. In the 2019 interview, in prison, when he finally admits that he killed his daughters himself, he also destroys the last fiction he was trying to preserve, the one in which Shanann would have borne the most unbearable responsibility. He can no longer hide behind an explosion of rage directed at her. He must acknowledge that he took Bella and Celeste, that he brought them alive into his truck, that he killed them afterward, out of sight, on a site he knew from professional routine. What he discovers is that his act cannot be reduced to a moment of panic or a psychological blackout. Every forensic detail, every GPS data point, every body cam video recounts a series of successive actions. Getting up, watching her sleep, sitting on the bed, squeezing, coming back, carrying, loading the truck, hitting the road, digging the shallow grave, opening the oil tank hatches. Across from him, Shanann's family, in the courtroom, lose something more than a loved one. They lose the illusion that there are always clear signals before such a tipping point. The videos where Shanann shows her family life, the messages where she worries about emotional distance, the trips, the arguments with the in-laws about food allergies, none of that was enough to sketch out a readable threat. What was unfolding that night of the 12th to the 13th was nowhere visible on Facebook. The media, for their part, lose the illusion of a neat story. The first headlines about the grieving husband are still online when the arrest affidavit comes out, when the images of the neighbor showing the truck backed into the driveway loop non-stop. The same house, the same facade, tied to two incompatible narratives. The interviews with Christopher are replayed. His t-shirt too large, his pleas for help on the doorstep already sealed by the facts. Later, the house remains empty, hard to sell, stuck in legal procedures. Creditors want to recover what they can. The records list debts, failed auctions. Neighbors move away. People come just to look at the facade, like a documentary set. At the back of a cell in Wisconsin, far from Colorado, Christopher now lives in a place where nothing can be staged anymore. No lawn to mow, no garage, no SUV to back up. Schedules, doors, hallways. He takes part in religious activities, according to reports. He sometimes answers letters. He no longer has a story to control, only a frozen file. What remains as a question is not how he was able to lie for so long, nor how the police caught him so quickly, but something else. If we can no longer rely on perfect images or obvious signs, what really alerts us? The next time someone smiles at their front door, saying they just want their family to come home. The question goes on, silently. A lawn in front of the house on Saratoga Trail, a little too tall, speckled with weeds, stirs in a dry wind. The "No Trespassing" sign creaks slightly on its post. Through an upstairs window, a crooked blind lets a dusty band of light fall across a bare wall. In the kitchen, a faded magnet in the shape of a butterfly still holds the corner of a blank piece of paper on the fridge. On the street, a car slows down, does not stop, and drives on without a sound.